Good morning, everyone. First of all, a very warm welcome to Bloomberg. My name's Konstantin Kotsias. I'm European Director at Bloomberg. It's great to welcome you all here today for the Treasury Connect Digital Technology Conference, bringing together a wide range of senior policymakers, business and industry leaders and investors. Here at Bloomberg, we believe in the importance of bringing the business and financial community together with policymakers to facilitate dialogue on key issues such as today. And I also think that Bloomberg is a really good example of the kind of innovation, data science, technology, commitment and investment to the UK we'll no doubt be hearing more about in the course of today. We're facing some strong economic headwinds, indicators showing we're heading for a downturn. Russia's invasion of the Ukraine heightened risks in the financial system. Energy shocks, impact to liquidity and continued disruption to supply chains, all underlining some of the fragilities in the real economy. But since the Chancellor has taken up post in October, he's restored some confidence in markets and is providing a vision for the UK economy. And I know all of us are looking forward to hearing more about his plan for boosting economic growth. Over the years, we at Bloomberg have worked closely with Treasury. We've seen at close hand the work they've put in on a range of important policy issues such as today, but also financial markets, the green agenda and more. So we're looking forward to that continued partnership as we navigate these difficult times. But before we hear from the Chancellor, we're also delighted to welcome here today the Secretary of State for BEIS, Grant Shapps, the Secretary of State for DCMS, Michelle Donnellan, Secretary of State for, that's the only Secretary of State actually, it's a long list of them. Matt Clifford, the CEO and Chair of Advanced Research and Invention Agency, for a conversation on digital technology. So without further ado, over to you, Grant, Michelle and Matt, and thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for coming here today. And of course, thank you to Bloomberg for hosting us this morning. I'm really delighted to be here opening this event and as Digital Secretary to be in charge of what I think is one of the most important portfolios in government. We are home here in the UK to an extraordinary tech sector. And last year, this small island became just the third country in the world to have a tech sector that valued at over $1 trillion, behind only China and the United States, and the first in Europe by some distance. Our sector is worth more than double of Germany's and 3 times more than France's, and is home to hundreds of unicorns, including household names like Deliveroo and Monzo. And perhaps most importantly, we are world leaders in the kind of tech that is going to dominate the future, like AI. And this didn't happen by accident. We got here thanks to the people in this room, thanks to your ideas, your passion, and your entrepreneurial spirit. We also got here because we have a clear vision for where this country is going, and a government that is prepared to match that ambition with action. I believe that Britain is uniquely placed to become the world's #1 when it comes to tech. Now that we are outside of the EU, and with our proud history of being a nation where we offer measured, proportionate regulation that sparks and enables innovation, where we also really value and encourage the entrepreneurial spirit, where entrepreneurs have both the stability but also the freedom to invest and innovate. And that's why, in the decade or so since the startup scene first began springing into life, the UK has seen a sustained explosion of investment and growth. It happened because we brought together a potent mix of 4 key fundamental things: the right people, the right money, the right ideas, and the right regulation. Which is why all of these 4 things underpinned the government's digital strategy. And if we want to take things to the next level, to the very top, then we need to double down on all of those four things. To double down on people through things like addressing the skills gaps, which is the theme, of course, of one of today's roundtables. And having spent 3 years in the Department for Education prior to this, I have firsthand seen how the skills element really can play a key role. And for me, just 2 stats illustrate the urgency of that challenge very clearly. Firstly, digital roles are now increasing 4 times faster than the workforce as a whole. And secondly, there are on average 173,000 vacancies per month for digital occupations in the UK. Those unfilled roles are costing us up to £150 billion a year in lost GDP. So we need to continue to focus on people. This is a country that on average has produced a Nobel Prize winner every year for the past 2 decades. And we need to keep it that way. We need to continue as well to focus on money, to keep venture capital investing flowing through, to prioritise our growing science and tech budget, and to work together to drive investment in our 5G and gigabit networks. On ideas, we need to continue to foster investment in research and development, plus help our world-class universities to produce even more world-class graduates and skills that will drive the tech sector forward even faster. And we need to keep providing the right regulation to create that competitive environment that is innovative, where people can start up the next Deliveroo or DeepMind, and they can scale it up and go on to become global success stories. So we already have the right list of ingredients. We just need to double down on them. And I will finish by saying that I think this is the perfect time to be so ambitious and so bold. There is no doubt that this is an extremely challenging time for our economy. We've just been through a once-in-a-century pandemic. We're experiencing war in Europe, soaring inflation, and an increase in the cost of living across the globe. But let's not forget, our world-renowned tech ecosystem sprung up in the shadows of the 2007-8 financial crisis. And if any country has the brainpower and the ingenuity to repeat history and use tech to drive us out of another challenging period, then I genuinely believe it is this one. The Business Secretary, the Chancellor, and I will work closely with all of you over the coming months to make this happen. We will ensure that your views and your ideas are represented as your voices in government. And on that note, I would now like to hand over to the Business Secretary, Grant Shapps.
Michelle, thank you very much indeed, and good morning to everyone here, and thanks very much to Bloomberg for hosting us. Last week I was high up in the Swiss Alps at Davos, and amongst the snowy, white, freezing cold mountains, for some reason I couldn't stop recalling those famous words from a former British Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, nearly 60 years ago now, when he talked about the spark of the white heat of technology that he said would revolutionise Britain for the future. Now, I know that Michelle and I and Harold Wilson would have our political differences, but he was right about it back then, and it did change the country. But now we stand on the threshold of a new revolution, and as that unfolds, we find ourselves at the vanguard of incredible changes, because we only grow if we innovate. And embracing technologies is the way to do things differently. We've already got the firm foundations, as Michelle was saying, in place, 4 of the world's 10 top universities. And right here in the City of London, one of only 2 of the great financial centres in the world. We have a spirit of openness that swung through the 60s, and it's strong now as it ever was before, in a country that is second in the world for business startups, and as was mentioned, home to one of only $3 trillion tech centres globally. But, if we are to succeed, then we need to speed up. We've got to build on the strong foundations, backing British businesses every single step of the way as they grow and spin outs into startups and then into scale-ups. And we need to help them move from being scale-ups into unicorns and decacorns and whatever the hell it is that comes when they get to 100 and then 1,000 billion. Someone here will know. And from scale-ups, we need to make sure that we scale up Britain in a vision of a high-skill, high-wage economy where entrepreneurs are empowered and creativity is encouraged. And to make that vision a reality, Jeremy has already announced the largest R&D budget in our history. The Office of ONS, the Office of National Statistics, says that is about 2.9% of our GDP. And we're using post-Brexit freedoms to ditch some of the burdensome bureaucracy and build on regulatory environment that's responsive and attractive to business to encourage sustainable growth. So we're supporting businesses right at the cutting edges and breaking new ground through transformative technologies like quantum and robotics. Just picture the scene. Sat here, it should be easy because we are sat on the site of a ruined temple of Mithras. This was a Roman cult beneath our feet nearly 2 millennia ago, and in the basement, you can go and see it for yourself, about 600 different artifacts have been left of their extraordinary lives right where we sit. And I wonder what they would make today of the technologies that we are right now transforming. Take artificial intelligence, for example. To them, it would surely seem incredibly mysterious. Mithras, the elusive god of those early Londinians, would have surely worshipped the very AI that the ground was based on. But today, it promises to... Sorry, I was getting very confused, I realise. And that is why I'm going to move on. Today, these promises are all there to be tackled, and you can see the route through to doing extraordinary things, from disease diagnosis and drug development to smart farming and green energy transition. With our national strategy, we've committed to maximising AI's potential, investing in top talent and rigorous world-class research with new AI centres for doctoral training at universities across the country, backed up by £170 million in funding and delivering of 1,000 new PhDs. And perhaps if there are any classical enthusiasts that I haven't put off in the room today, we might one day be able to meet those Romans in a metaverse Mytherium of our own. But though having a personalised ancient avatar is an appealing prospect, AI is only just one part of the picture. We're investing in world-class catapults too, to explore how innovative technologies can supercharge our industries. And with funding from Innovate UK and financing from the British Business Bank, we're supporting entrepreneurs everywhere to access investment faster. But if we're going to make Britain the scale-up nation, we must relentlessly challenge ourselves to do better and better. Because for all of our brilliance in tech, in science, and those many advantages that Michelle and I have been describing, we have yet to produce our own company of the size and scale in the modern era of a Google, an Amazon, or an Apple. And that's why in Davos, I announced a Scale-Up Summit for later this year, which will bring together figures at the frontier of tech from around the world to work out how we replicate the success here in Britain. And some of our sessions later will start to tackle that very question. Together, I believe we can unleash the white heat once more, making ourselves Silicon Valley with a British edge for the century to come. And with so much talent in the room today, we have a fantastic opportunity for us to get cracking. But it's only by sharing our ideas and experiences we can really challenge one another to think differently. And it's only when we think differently that we can spur the kind of innovation and ingenuity that we need to tackle the challenges of today and tomorrow, to back great British business, to build industries fit for the future, and to grow our economy in a manner that our Londinian predecessors, I promised not to go back to this, didn't I, of Mithras would really approve of. Thank you very much for coming today, and I hope you have a great session.
Good morning. I was just telling the Secretary of State that my wife is a classicist, and it's very rare that our worlds of deep technology investment and classics get to coincide. So to have 3 such opportunities in one speech is remarkable. But good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Clifford. I was thinking about how to open this morning, and I thought I might say something like this. It's an honor to be here today to speak about the UK's potential to be a science and technology superpower in the 21st century. The UK has a long history of scientific and technical, but I decided not to say this. And the reason I decided not to say this is I didn't write those words. In fact, those words were written for me. I opened up a new artificial intelligence program called ChatGPT. Lots of you may have used it. And said, write me a speech for an audience of politicians and influential business leaders about the UK's potential to be a science and technology superpower. And about 3 seconds later, it wrote me a whole speech, which I could have just come here and read. Now, maybe you think that those opening words were quite mediocre. Maybe you thought they were pretty good. Actually, it doesn't matter. The important thing is not how good ChatGPT and other technologies like it are today. The point is that the capabilities of artificial intelligence today are already impressive, but they're the least capable they're ever going to be. They're the worst they're ever going to be, and from here they're only going to improve, likely exponentially. And of course, language is far from the only domain where artificial intelligence is improving things all the time. Right here in London, over the last 2 years, DeepMind's AlphaFold, DeepMind, of course, a company started in the UK by graduates of one of our top universities that's already been mentioned. DeepMind's AlphaFold has more or less cracked the code of protein folding, one of the most important problems in biology. Then you zoom out from AI, look at nuclear fusion, quantum computing, mRNA vaccines. It's clear that humanity is on the cusp of technological breakthroughs that will transform society for the better and create completely new industries worth trillions of pounds. And crucially, the UK has everything that it takes, has the full potential to be a global leader in each of these fields, to, as the Secretary of State says, build the 100 billion and trillion-pound companies that exploit these technologies. We have the potential to be the obvious place to start these companies and the obvious place to scale them. All the ingredients are in place. I've seen this firsthand. Over the last decade, my investment firm, Entrepreneur First, has helped extraordinary individuals from across the UK and the world to build hundreds of companies now worth tens of billions of pounds, including some of the UK's top AI success stories, companies like Tractable and Magic Pony Technology. That's been possible only because of the incredible talent trained in our world-class universities, attracted from all over the world. I'm now seeing it through a new light in my non-day job as the founding non-exec chair of ARIA. As many of you will know, ARIA is the UK's new independent R&D funding agency for high-risk, high-reward scientific research. ARIA has been given extraordinary freedoms and £800 million to pursue the funding of transformational science and technology. We're very lucky to have as our founding CEO, Dr. Ilan Gur, and if you ask him why did he move his family all the way around the world from the place that's meant to be the center of all this, from Silicon Valley, he says it's very simple. He says that head for head, the UK has the greatest concentration of scientific talent anywhere in the world. For him, it was obvious. Now, ARIA is just getting started. In fact, we only formally launched this week, but we see an amazing opportunity to fund the breakthroughs of the future. And finally, I'm also seeing it through the work I'm doing supporting Sir Patrick Valance's review of the regulation of innovation, which I think we'll be discussing one of the breakouts later. It's clear from the engagement we've had so far on that review that the UK is already starting from a very strong foundation, but that there's a real opportunity for us to be the world leader in the governance of innovation, to set the standards that others follow, that attract entrepreneurs and inventors all over the world to the UK to build their businesses. Of course, none of this is inevitable, but I do believe that there is no country of our size anywhere in the world that starts with so many advantages when it comes to reaping the benefits of scientific and technological progress. With the right talent, the right capital, and the right regulation, we will see extraordinary things, perhaps things we can scarcely imagine today, built here in the UK. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited for the conversation we're going to have to make sure that we fulfill that potential and make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matt. Well, thank you very much indeed, Matt, Michelle, and Grant. It's absolutely an honour to invite our next guest up. I've known the Chancellor for a long time. Really looking forward to what he has to say. And I'd just say this, he really does bring, he's been talking about this innovation and technology narrative for a while. He really does bring that entrepreneurial view and lens to it. And I think that's partly because of his experience as a business founder and an innovator. So fantastic to have him here, ladies and gentlemen, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt.
Thanks, Con. Good morning. Thank you for that welcome. Thank you, Con, for having us. Thank you all for joining us at Bloomberg. From the way we communicate and collaborate to the way we buy and sell goods and services, digital technology has transformed nearly every aspect of our economic lives. How do I know that? Because I too, just like Matt, asked ChatGPT to craft the opening lines of this speech. And who needs politicians when you've got AI? Like other countries, the UK has been dealing with economic headwinds caused by a decade of black swan events, a financial crisis, a pandemic, and then an international energy crisis. And my party understands better than others the importance of low taxes in creating incentives and fostering the animal spirits that spur economic growth. But another conservative insight is that risk-taking by individuals and businesses can only happen when governments provide economic and financial stability. So the best tax cut right now is a cut in inflation. And the plan I set out in the autumn statement tackles that root cause of instability in the British economy. The Prime Minister talked about halving inflation as one of his 5 key priorities. And doing so is the only sustainable way to restore industrial harmony. But today I want to talk about his second priority, to grow the economy. And just in case you weren't completely sure of that, I've helpfully put it up on a screen behind me. We want to be one of the most prosperous countries in Europe. And today I'm going to outline the 4 pillars of our plan to get there. Just as our plan to halve inflation will require patience and discipline, so too will our plan for prosperity and growth. But it's also going to need something else which is in rather short supply, optimism that we can get there. Just this month, columnists from both left and right have talked about an existential crisis, Britain teetering on the edge, and that all we can hope for is that things don't get worse. I welcome the debate, but chancellors too are allowed their say. And I say simply this: declinism about Britain is just wrong. It's always been wrong in the past, and it's wrong today. Some of the gloom is based on statistics that don't reflect the whole picture. Like every G7 country, our growth was slower in the years after the financial crisis than before it. But since 2010, the UK has grown faster than France, Japan, and Italy, not at the bottom, but right in the middle of the pack. Since the Brexit referendum, we've grown at about the same rate as Germany. Yes, we've not returned to pre-pandemic employment or output levels, but an economy that contracted 20% in a pandemic still has nearly the lowest unemployment for half a century. And whilst our public sector continues to recover more slowly than we would like from the pandemic, strengthening the case for reform, our private sector has grown 7.5% in the last year. Yes, inflation has risen, but it's still lower than in 14 EU countries, with interest rates rising more slowly than in the US or Canada. And yes, we have to improve our productivity, but output per hour worked is now higher than pre-pandemic. And last week, a survey of business leaders by PwC said the UK was the 3rd most attractive country for CEOs expanding their businesses. Economists and journalists know you can spend a long time arguing the toss on statistics. But the strongest grounds for optimism comes not from debating this or that way of analysing data, but from what we've been hearing about this morning, our long-term prospects. Because when it comes to the innovation industries that will shape and define this century, the UK is powerfully positioned to play a leading role. Let's just look at some of them. In digital technology, as we heard from Michelle, we have become only the third economy in the world with $1 trillion sector. We've created more unicorns than France and Germany combined, with 8 UK cities now home to 2 or more unicorns. The London-Oxford-Cambridge triangle has the largest number of tech businesses in the world outside San Francisco and New York. PwC say that UK GDP will be up to 10% higher in 2030 because of AI alone. FinTech attracted more funding last year than anywhere in the world outside the US. Or life sciences, where we also have the largest sector in Europe and a brilliant advocate with our superb Science Minister, George Freeman. We produced one of the world's first COVID vaccines, estimated to have saved more than 6 million lives worldwide. We identified the treatment most widely used to save lives in hospitals, saving more than 1 million lives across the globe. We're behind only the US and China in terms of high-quality life science papers published, and every one of the world's top 25 biopharmaceutical firms has operations in the UK. Another big growth area is our green and clean energy sector. The UK is a world leader here, with the largest offshore wind farm in the world. Last year, we were able to generate an incredible 40% of our electricity from renewables. And on one day, a rather windy December the 30th, we actually got 60% of our electricity from renewables, mainly wind. McKinsey estimate that the global market opportunity for UK green industries could be worth more than £1 trillion between now and 2030. And we're proceeding with a new plant at Sizewell C, led by our brilliant business secretary, who also spoke very wisely and surprisingly classically earlier on. And I could also talk about our creative industries, which employ over 2 million people, grew at twice the rate of the UK economy in the last decade, and have made the UK the world's largest exporter of unscripted TV formats, helped give us a top 3 spot in the Portland Soft Power Index. Or our advanced manufacturing sector, key to exports, where we produce around half the world's large civil aircraft wings and its biggest aero engines, as well as around half the world's Formula One Grand Prix cars. And the golden thread running through the industries where Britain does best is innovation. Amongst the world's largest economies, the Global Innovation Index ranks us 4th globally. Those innovation industries now account for around a quarter of our output. They've been responsible for nearly all our productivity growth since 1997. And they're also the reason that all of you are here. In the audience, we've got leaders from Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple and Google, the world's largest tech companies, all with major operations in the UK. We've got Monzo and Revolut, shining examples from our world-beating fintech sector. We have founders and CEOs from some of our most exciting UK technology companies like Proximi and Matilon. You are vital for Britain's economic future, but Britain is vital for your future too. So I want to ask all of you to help our country achieve something that is both ambitious and strategic. I want to ask you to help turn the UK into the world's next Silicon Valley. What do I mean by that? If anyone is thinking of starting or investing in an innovation or technology-centered business, I want them to do it here. I want the world's tech entrepreneurs, life science innovators, and green tech companies to come to the UK because it offers the best possible place to make their visions happen. And if you do, we will put at your service not just British ingenuity, but British universities to fuel your innovation, Britain's financial sector to fund it, and a British government that will back you to the hilt. Our universities are ranked second globally for their quality and include 3 of the world's top 10. In order to support the groundbreaking work they do in so many new fields, the government has protected our £20 billion research budget, now at the highest level in history. And as you look for funding to expand, we offer one of the world's top 2 financial hubs and the world's largest net exporter of financial services. The capability of the City of London, combined with the research strengths of our universities, makes our aspiration to be a technology superpower not just ambitious, but achievable. And today I'm here to say the government is determined to make it happen. But like any business embracing new opportunities, we should also be straight about our weaknesses. Structural issues like poor productivity, skills gaps, low business investment, and the over-concentration of wealth in the southeast have led to uneven and lower growth. Real incomes haven't risen by as much as they could as a result. Confidence in the future, though, starts with honesty about the present. So we want to be one of the most prosperous countries in Europe, and today I want to set out our plan to address those issues. That plan, our plan for growth, is necessitated, energised, and made possible by Brexit. The desire to move to a high-wage, high-skill economy is one that's shared on all sides of that debate, and we need to make Brexit a catalyst for the bold choices that will take advantage of the nimbleness and flexibilities that it makes possible. So this is a plan for growth. It's not a series of measures or announcements, which will have to wait, I'm afraid, for budgets and autumn statements in the years ahead. But this plan is a framework against which individual policies will be assessed and taken forward. And I set out that plan, those priorities, under 4 pillars. They build on the people, capital, ideas themes set out by the Prime Minister last year in his May's lecture, and as such are the pillars essential for any modern innovation-led economy. For ease of memory, the 4 pillars all happen to start with the letter E, the 4 E's of economic growth and prosperity, and they are enterprise, education, employment, and everywhere. So let's start with the first E, which is enterprise. If we're to be Europe's most prosperous economy, we need to have, quite simply, its most dynamic and productive companies. Now, there's a wide range of literature citing the importance of entrepreneurship on business dynamism, whereby more productive firms enter and grow and less productive firms shrink. But I don't just believe the theory, I've put it into practice. I set up and ran my own business for 14 years. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, and I actually owe it to Margaret Thatcher and Nigel Lawson. Because by the time I got to university and was thinking about my career options, they had changed attitudes towards entrepreneurship. Had they not, I would probably have ended up in the city or the civil service. Instead, I took a different route to end up in the Treasury, less the fast stream, more the long way round. But like thousands of others setting up on their own, I learnt to take calculated risks, to live with uncertainty, and to work through failures, of which there were many. Every big business was a startup once. And we won't build the world's next Silicon Valley unless we nurture battalions of dynamic new challenger businesses. Today, we are already ranked by the World Bank as one of the best places to do business amongst large European nations, second only to America in the G7. And the result of that pro-business climate is that since 2010, we've created more than 1 million new businesses in this country. But the question I want to ask is, how are we going to generate the next million? And firstly, we need lower taxes. In Britain, even after recent tax rises, we have one of the lowest levels of business tax as a proportion of GDP amongst major countries. But we should be explicit. high taxes directly affect the incentives which determine decisions by entrepreneurs, investors, or larger companies about whether to pursue their ambitions in Britain. With volatile markets and high inflation, sound money must come first. But our ambition should be to have nothing less than the most competitive tax regime of any major country. That means restraint on spending. In case anyone is in any doubt about who will actually deliver that restraint to make a low-tax economy possible, I gently point out that in the 3 weeks since Labour promised no big government chequebook, they've made £45 billion of unfunded spending commitments. But it isn't just about lower taxes. We also need a more positive attitude to risk-taking. Let's start with one of the most public risks taken this year. Richard Branson, his team, and the UK Space Agency deserve massive credit for getting Launcher One off the ground in Cornwall. The mission may not have succeeded this time, but what we learn from it will make future success more likely. And we should heed the words of Thomas Edison, who said, "I haven't failed 10,000 times. I've successfully found 10,000 ways that will not work." Edison was American, and our attitude to risk in this country can still be too cautious compared to our US friends. But we are capable of smart risk-taking in this country. At the start of the pandemic, we bought over 350 million doses of vaccine without knowing if they would actually work. And we ended up with one of the fastest, most effective vaccine programs in the world. We also need, if we're going to deliver those competitive enterprises, smarter regulation. Brexit's an opportunity not just to change regulations, but also to work with our experienced, effective, and independent regulators to create an economic environment which is more innovation-friendly and more growth-focused. Our Chief Scientific Advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, is currently reviewing how the UK can better regulate emerging technologies in high-growth sectors, and the government's identifying where to reform the laws we inherited from the EU. In the digital space, Sir Patrick is working with the brilliant Matt Clifford, who we heard from earlier, and our amazing Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, both of whom gave excellent speeches. Before we conclude those findings, we want to hear from you, and that's why we've invited you this morning. And we'll repeat that process for green industries, life sciences, creative industries, and advanced manufacturing. Finally, when it comes to the E of enterprise, there is a critical need for easier access to capital, particularly scale-ups. I'm supporting important changes to the pensions regulatory charge cap. I've used the regulatory flexibility provided by Brexit to change the Solvency II regulations, which will begin to be implemented in the coming months. Alongside other measures announced in the Edinburgh reforms, this could unlock over £100 billion of additional investment into the UK's most productive growth industries. But there's much more to be done, and I want to harness the ideas and expertise in this room to turn the E of enterprise into an enterprise culture built on low taxes, reward for risk, access to capital, and smarter regulation. Now, the next E is education. And this is an area where we have made dramatic progress in recent years, thanks to the work of successive Conservative education ministers. The UK has risen nearly 10 places in the global school league tables for maths and reading since 2015 alone. Our teachers and lecturers are some of the very best in the world. As the Prime Minister said, having a good education system is the best economic, moral and social policy any country can have. And that's why in the autumn statement we gave schools an extra £2.3 billion of funding, and why the Prime Minister recently prioritised the teaching of maths until 18. But there is much to improve. We don't do nearly as well for the 50% of school leavers who don't go to university as we do for the ones who do. We have around 9 million adults with low basic literacy or numeracy skills. Over 100,000 people leaving school every year unable to reach the required standard in English and maths. And that matters. We are becoming an adaptive economy in which people are likely to have to train for not one, but several jobs in their working lives. Not having basic skills in reading and maths makes that difficult, sometimes impossible. And equally important is what happens beyond school. We've made progress with T-levels, boot camps and apprenticeships, and Sir Michael Barber is advising the government on further improvements to the implementation of our reform agenda. And we want to ensure our young people have the skills that they would get in Switzerland or Singapore. If we want to reduce dependence on migration and become a high-skill economy, the E of education will be essential. And that means ensuring opportunity is as open to those who don't go to university as to those who do. So, Silicon Valley enterprises, Finnish and Singaporean education skills. Let me now turn to the third E, which is employment. If companies can't employ the staff they need, they can't grow. High employment levels have long been a strength of our economic model. Since 2010, we have seen a record employment rate, the lowest unemployment in nearly 50 years, and labour market participation at an all-time high. Partly thanks to the coalition reforms of a decade ago, we are at 76% employment levels, higher than Canada, the US, France, or Italy. But the pandemic has exposed weaknesses in our model. Total employment is nearly 300,000 people lower than pre-pandemic, with around 1/5 of working-age adults economically inactive. Excluding students, that amounts to 6.6 million people, an enormous and shocking waste of talent and potential. Of that 6.6 million people, around 1.4 million want to work, but a further 5 million don't. So it's time for a fundamental program of reforms to support people with long-term conditions or mental illness to overcome the barriers and prejudices that prevent them from working. We will never harness the full potential of our country unless we unlock it for each and every one of our citizens. Nor will we fix our productivity puzzle unless everyone who can participate does. So to those who retired early after the pandemic or haven't found the right role after furlough, I say Britain needs you, and we will look at the conditions necessary to make work worth your while. That's why employment is such a vital third E. Enterprise, education, employment. 3 key components for our long-term prosperity. And I conclude with my final E, everywhere. That means ensuring the benefits of economic development are felt not just in London and the South East, but across the whole of the UK. It is socially divisive if young people feel the only way to make a decent living is to head south. But it's also economically damaging. If our second cities were the productive powerhouses we see in other major countries, our GDP would be nearly 5% higher, making us second only to the United States and Germany for GDP per head. And that's why levelling up really matters, and why last week it was so exciting to see the progress being made. Since February 2020, when the levelling up agenda really got underway, 70% of new employed jobs have been created outside London and the South East. Thanks to our powerhouse regions, we remain one of the top 10 manufacturers globally, and the same is starting to happen with new industries, whether fintech in Bristol, gaming in Dundee, clean energy in Teesside. Every region has seen pay grow faster than London since 2010, which shows that our approach to regional growth is working. But there's much more to do. And whilst government grants can play a galvanizing role, they aren't the whole answer. We also need the connectivity that comes from better infrastructure. That's why in the autumn statement we protected key projects like HS2, East-West Rail and Core Northern Powerhouse Rail. Digital connectivity matters as well, which is why under Michelle's leadership, full fibre broadband is now available to more than 40% of homes in the UK. Last year, 4 million more premises got access, with the biggest increases in Scotland and Northern Ireland. But the E of everywhere has to be about local wealth creation as much as about local infrastructure. So this year we will announce investment zones, mini Canary Wharfs, supporting each one of our growth industries, each one focused in high potential but underperforming areas, in line with our mission to level up. They'll be focused on our research strengths, executed in partnership with local government, with advantageous fiscal treatment to attract new investment. And we'll shortly start a process to identify exactly where they'll go. But spreading opportunity everywhere needs local decision-making alongside local infrastructure and local enterprise. So we must also give civic entrepreneurs more ability to find and fund their own solutions without having to bang down a Whitehall door. Shortly, over 50% of the population of England will be covered by a devolution deal, and 2/3 covered by a unitary authority, and that's a very important part of that. But we need to move more decisively towards fiscal devolution so that fantastic local leaders like Ben Houchen and Andy Street have the tools they need to deliver for their communities. So 4 E's: enterprise, education, employment, everywhere. 4 E's to unlock our national potential to be one of Europe's most exciting, most innovative, and most prosperous economies. Bill Gates is supposed to have said people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. When it comes to the British economy, we're certainly not going to fall into that trap. We will remember the essential foundation on which long-term prosperity depends, namely the sound money that comes from bringing down inflation. But right now starts our longer-term journey into growth and prosperity. World-beating enterprises to make Britain the world's next Silicon Valley. An education system where world-class skills sit alongside world-class degrees. Employment opportunities that tap into the potential of every single person so businesses can build the motivated teams they need. And as talent is spread everywhere, so we will make sure opportunities are as well. Yes, there are many structural challenges to address. And working through our 4 pillars, we will do just that. Never forgetting, though, the combination of bold ingenuity and quiet confidence that defines our national character. Ladies and gentlemen, being a technology entrepreneur changed my life. Being a technology superpower can change our country's destiny. So let's make it happen. Thank you very much.
Take that. I think it's better if you take that one so they can hear you. Chancellor, thank you very much indeed for that very substantive speech and a very wide-ranging exposition of some of the opportunities and a candid assessment of some of the challenges ahead.